Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife Kara is at work, and today we are doing the good and bad review on the Kitefin. Knives is the maker of this knife, and this is definitely a winner, but like most knives, it does have some bad. So let's get into this. So this knife was donated and given to us by Mr. Amazing, and we cannot thank him enough for his overwhelming generosity to our channel and just supporting us so much. Thank you, man. I'm speechless because of, just how generous you are, and thank you, man. We really appreciate you. Let's get into this awesome EDC knife. So this is a knife of 7.5 inches with a blade length of just under 3 1/4. So it's just over 3 inches. Here's a couple size comparisons. Here is the Civivi Elementum, which is also made by And then here is the CJRB Mini Felspar. Both knives are a little bit smaller than the Kitefin. And then here is a knife that is pretty much the same size as the Kitefin, the Zero Tolerance 0450. Another knife that is very, very similar in size, if not the exact same size, the Benchmade Bug Out. Most people know the size of this knife, so it's the size of a Benchmade Bug Out. And most people know the Benchmade Bug Out is an amazing EDC size, especially for people that don't like very large knives. There's a lot of great things about this knife. So the drop point blade is a great blade shape for EDC. It allows you to do utility cuts, using the tip, and it also gives you a little bit of belly for slicing and enough flat, or you can actually just use, because it doesn't really have a flat zone. It's more of just a, excuse me. It's more of just a tapering belly, but you could definitely get some good push cuts going with that. Just a great blade shape, especially with how thin this S35 VN blade steel is. This is super thin at 100 thousandths thick. Very thin blade stock. And then on top of that, it has a beautifully deep hollow ground blade, and gets down to about 12 thousandths behind the edge. That is amazing. So amazing. This knife is a crazy good cutter. Very good slicer. The tip is going to be a little petite. I mean, it's not going to be something you're going to want to pry with or anything like that, but it will be very good for utility cuts and anything you need to outline or use the tip for. This is a great tip for that. Gives you a great finger choil that also acts as a sharpening choil, which you will get a lot of beautiful sharpenings out of this since this hollow grind is so thin. Let's actually look at how thin that is ground. Look at that. And what I'm looking at is right here, the thinness of the blade. Very, very thin. But like I said, it also is a finger choil, so you can use it like that. And you can use the whole meat of your finger if, I guess it might be too small if you have really big, meaty hands, but it also can work. You can make it work, especially if you're just going to use it like this. You see the machining, the belt satin, very beautiful. It does have this top swedge up there. Very minimal jimping on the spine, but it does work a little bit. It's kind of placed a little far back, especially if you're going to use this choil, but it's there and you can use it. It does have an internal stop pin, as you can see right there moving. There's a track going around right here and right here, and the stop pin is connected to the blade. And it locks up right there, and then the lock bar sinks in place. It does have a steel lock bar insert, since this is a titanium frame lock. It does have a coating on the handle, as you can see, with a great stone washing. And then it does have an over travel stop too, so you don't bend the lock bar. As you can see, if it'll focus, bang, right there. You see how it stops right there? And the hardware, great, nice big hardware. Everything is nice and big except for the clip. The clip does have little T6s. Not that big of a deal. I'm happy to see, you know, they usually do use great titanium hardware, by the way. We has some of the best titanium hardware I've seen. I'm sure I know there's other fantastic titanium hardware out there. I'm just saying that Wee's titanium hardware is very hard, very well done, and is just great. Now, this is a reversible pocket clip, so you might want to remove it. So if you are going to remove it, remember it's T6s. Be careful not to strip it out. It is beautifully centered. And then I love the bronzing hardware, just really makes this thing pop. And there are a lot of other variations of this. So this one's about $153. There are other ones. It goes up to the 160s range. You know, there's carbon fiber one, there's a milled titanium one, so on and so forth. So if you're wanting one of these, they might be sold out right when I'm posting this video, but they are coming back in stock, so you can get a pre-order in, just so you know. Let's get to the ergos. The ergos are pretty good. It is a thin-handled, because of the thin blade, thin handle. So it's not going to be the most ergonomic knife, but it's okay. It's a great little EDC knife. And since the blade is going to pass through materials very easily, it'll work with this type of handle. But like I said, it's not going to be the most ergonomic because it's such a thin, small, not small, but just a thin, thinner knife. So, but you still can get a great grip on it. I can get all 4 fingers on it, especially if I use this choil. So great, for the size of it. Fantastic. Being able to get my whole hand on it and use it. Now, the clip is a deep carry clip. Like I said, it is reversible. Let's get into the action. So the action, nice and crisp. That was a very light push I just did. So you can do the push button because of the way the flipper tab is. If you look at the flipper tab, it's set up for a push button or a light switch. So that's awesome. But the detent is very, very crisp. If you put your finger on the lock bar, it doesn't quite lock you out, but it does make the detent a lot stronger. Now, if you keep your finger off of the detent ball, because remember the detent ball is what's holding in the blade. So if you keep your finger off of the lock bar, off of the detent ball, super, super crisp. Wee does amazing detent tension or detent strengths, which makes this light blade fly out with no wrist, and very reliably. Now, when you unlock it, the detent ball is very early. There is no reverse detent track, or there is no reverse detent ramp, but it is nice and early. So when you unlock it, if you let it hit your finger, it's going to be past the detent ball. It is a very light blade, so it's not going to be very drop shutty, but it is very smooth on the closing, even with just some shakes. But you can easily just do one nice good slap, and it will slap shut right into the closed position. Now, the lock bar, easy to get to. It is jimped, as you can see, and it does work great. No problems there. You can easily unlock it without no issues. Great action. So, what are some bad things with all this amazing stuff? So there are a few. Well, one, I've already mentioned the T6s on the clip, but that's not really the bad thing. If you look, they put the clip on top of the titanium, which this is a titanium clip, by the way. And that's, it works. So it works great. So I just want to say the clip works fine, but I wish they would have countersunk the clip into the material. Now, the other thing is that even though this clip looks pretty awesome, but what makes it look awesome? It's the brass coloring, right? The bronze coloring. If it didn't have this brass coloring, it would look like every other cheap pocket clip that comes on a budget knife. It basically looks the same as their Civivi clip. It's just done in titanium. So, it works great. So I can't complain too much about that because it works so good. But, you know, I think it looks good, especially because of the bronzing. You know, with the bronze hardware, the bronze holes, nice and polished inside the holes. That does look really good. But it is just a standard, you know, clip, you know, or type of clip that you would see on any budget knife. Now, the next bad thing. This type of finish is going to scratch very easily. Like I said, there are lots of different versions of this, you know, this model, the Kitefin. But even though this is stonewashed, so it covers up a lot, you see that scratch right there? I mean, not a big deal. I don't mind it, but you might. So if you are somebody that's going to mind it, you might want to get a different one, because this one's probably going to scratch up pretty easily. Now, it already is kind of scratchy because of the stonewashing, so I don't mind it. I think it just makes it have more character. I like it. Another thing, and this is probably the worst one, it has a tiny smidgen of detent lash. What is detent lash? Okay, so detent lash is where you have the knife closed and your detent ball locks into place, holding the blade in there. So that's what creates the tension for you to build tension on the flipper tab and push it out, is the detent ball. But when it's locked in place, it shouldn't move. Now, if you watch, if I start pushing on this lock bar, or I mean the flipper tab just a little bit, it has a tiny bit of detent lash. Now, sometimes you could take these apart, clean out the detent hole, and it'll go away. I haven't heard anybody else complain about this on their Kitefin. And if you do have one, let me know down in the comments if yours has it. So sometimes the problem is that once it starts, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I can't say that's what's going to happen. Usually the reason why it happens is because the hole, the detent hole, is a little tiny bit bigger than the detent ball. But you know, this one is very, very minimal. Usually detent lash drives me nuts, but I have to admit, usually it's a lot worse than this. This is about the smallest amount it could possibly be. So it doesn't bother me right now. But if it does get worse, it might, you know. And in that case, then, you know, I might have to do something about it. But taking it apart, cleaning it, and making sure there's no lint in the hole, making sure, you know, stuff like that can get rid of it. So I do want to say that it is possible that, you know, it might go away after a good cleaning and checking the hole, if yours has it, I'm saying. Next, the jimping on the spine, it's so small and so little. Like if I put my finger in the choil, I'm past it. I'm not going to use that jimping at all. And in that case, this is very thin up here, so if you're pushing through, there was a couple times I was pushing through some cardboard and it gets a little sharp back here because they put this chamfer on the spine of the blade, which I don't mind because it helps material go over the blade, so it only helps this knife cut even better. So that part didn't bother me. But the jimping, it's so small, like it does work, but I have to use it like this if I'm going to use it. Like if I lay my thumb on it, it's not really going to work because it's pretty much behind my thumb. You know, it's going to get the back side of my thumb. No. I mean, so I have to really get back here, and in that case, I don't hold a knife like that, you know. So, but I will say there are a lot of different grips that work really good with this knife. So, I don't really even care about the jimping. But if you do, this isn't the jimping works, but it's not placed very well. But all in all, man, this is an amazing little knife. You can see, if you zoom in right there, there is that little S35 VN right there. Other than that, this blade is very sterile. I think that's amazing. I love seeing sterile blades. I love that this knife is a super slicer. I love that it has a deep hollow grind and they thought about sharpening it and it lasting a long time. I love that it's a nice deep carry clip that works very well. I love the action. I love the blade shape. There's just so many great things going for this knife. This knife is well worth what they're asking. And after using it, you really understand, because even though the ergos might not be the best just because it's so thin, because it goes through material so easily, you don't have to, like, you know, bear down on it, which does help other knives that maybe don't have as good as blade geometry as this go through materials very well, because you can get a good solid grip. This is kind of the opposite. You get good slicing performance and a little less grip. Anyways, great knife. I love it, love it, love it. I've been carrying it a lot. Fantastic knife. Like I said, if you guys do want to get one, you know, just pre-order one, because they are coming back and there's a lot of different versions of it. So if this isn't your style, you can find your style most likely. I love you guys. Thanks, Mr. Amazing. Peace.